You are listening to SPN, the Sports Podcasting Network.
Termina هناك لشوارزنيجر. أوب 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 أوب.
Va a pegarle el Ronaldinho Gaucho. Ya lo hace. Pierna derecha, directo al arco. ¡Golazo! 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 ¡Golazo!
This is Soccer Today, live on SPN Radio, your new live show about the beautiful game in all its glory, with Duane, Rollins and Kevin Laramee. MLS, EPL, La Liga, Champions League, all is fair game. Powered by the Sports Podcasting Network. Visit us at sportspodcastingnetwork.com.
All right, I was just mouthing the intro because that is the 1 millionth time I've heard it. This is a new record. Congratulations to me. Rudi Schuller joins us on the line because it is Gold Cup week. Friday, we're only 2 days away from the 2017 Gold Cup, the baby Gold Cup, but nonetheless, also known as the Gold Cup that Canada might have a chance to get out of the group.
Dreams.
Rudi, yeah, we dream big in this country. We dream really big. Rudi, how you doing?
That was not the millionth time I've heard that, so I'm good. I wasn't nothing along with it, but I have a more realistic dream for Canada in this Gold Cup, and that's to actually score a goal from the run of play.
Oh dear. Oh dear. All right, let's start positive. This is going to be a preview of Canada.
Hey, that was positive.
Yeah, that is. We might. They didn't score against Guatemala in the or was it Nicaragua or Guatemala? I forget which. It doesn't matter. It was a scrimmage.
They did score against Nicaragua. They played like a bunch of scrimmages. They didn't score in a couple of them, but they did score in 2 of them. They played like 4 scrimmages. So
okay, well that's good. That's positive. Starting positive. All right, let's start real positive though. It has been 17 years since Canada won the Gold Cup, Rudi. I've never really asked you this. What are your memories of that 2000 tournament? Where were you? How did you experience that? And what was it like to watch Canada win a trophy?
I thought it was the start of something that would become the norm. But obviously, 17 years of hindsight has beaten me down and given me a new reality that I wasn't really prepared for. I was, 17 years ago. Oh, God, that's so long ago. I was still living with my parents, and I remember sitting in my bedroom because they were watching. I was out. I remember I was actually out. And this was back in the day when you can avoid stuff. There was no Twitter, there's no Facebook, there's no smartphones. So you can avoid results. And I was out with friends that didn't really care about soccer. So I actually recorded it. Yeah, I videotaped it on a VCR. So I came home at 2:00 in the morning, probably a few too many drinks in, and watched it. And I think I was trying to cheer as quietly as possible at like 3 or 4 in the morning by the time that tape ended. So it was definitely memorable for me. I foolishly thought that it was going to be start of a new trend, that Canada was going to be a CONCACAF force. I still believe that can happen at some point, but I'm a lot more realistic about that goal. Baby steps now, and it all starts with this next Gold Cup.
All right, let's go back to the norm and the reality right now, and you sort of implied it in the first one for my next question. How well does this team score? Can this team score?
Yeah. It's very odd. We're seeing kind of a reversal of what of traditional Canada roles, in that traditionally we've always had great goalkeepers and able to kind of bore the opponent to death, keep a clean sheet, or keep it close as depending on the opponent. But now it's kind of the opposite. I think all the young talent coming up now, and not even just coming up, some of them that are already established, are on the attacking side of the field. Of course, everyone knows about Alphonso Davies, and Kyle Larin. But of course, we've also got Anthony Jackson-Amell. Lucas Cavallini is another one. Balou Tabla, if he ever joins Canada, is another one. There's a whole bunch that are on the attacking side. And unfortunately, on the defensive side, things are gotten a little thinner. We still don't know who's going to play right back for this team. I have no idea. Left back is a little bit better, but and the center backs are kind of aging. So, like I said, it's kind of a role reversal now because we're seeing a little bit more attacking talent. So I do think that Canada will score a goal. Now the concern is how many goals they'll let in.
If we go back to the last Gold Cup and the last iteration of this squad, you can say Julian de Guzman was the captain, was the mentor in the midfield. This role is now being filled by Patrice Bernier for this iteration of the men's national team for the Gold Cup in 2017. How important is his contribution, not necessarily just on the pitch, but literally being the mentor of Alphonso Davies as well, which could be maybe the key for Canada?
I think it's very important. And I think Zambrano has placed a lot of responsibility on Bernier's shoulders. If you look at that roster, he's the only one above 30 years old on that roster. I know that Tosin Ricketts and a couple others are turning 30. Sorry, not the only one, but he's the only one in the midfield, rather, above 30 years old. Of course, we got Dejan Jakovic and a couple other guys, but they're all 30 or 31. This guy's, of course, 37, turning 38 this year. So he's well traveled, let's say, but he's still playing well, and I think on merit he deserves to be there. And he's got a wealth of experience, not just at the club level, but also at the international level. He's kind of seen and done it all. And that's exactly who you want to take the young kid under his wing. He's literally old enough to be Alphonso Davies' father. So he's going to be a father figure on the pitch. But it's not just him. I think he's going to also take a guy like Samuel Piette under his wing and younger guys. We always think of, Piette seems to have been around forever because he started when he was so young. Kind of like in a Davies role. I think his first cap was when he was 17, but he's still only 22 years old. He's still got a lot to learn about the game and the international game, especially. So I think Bernier is going to be, he's kind of the Wazo man on that midfield line and of the entire team. And not only that, I think he's still got something to bring on the pitch. So it's not just, he's not just a wise head that young players can go to vent to about the coach or ask for advice. He can still lead by example as well. So I think he's kind of hit that perfect sweet spot, at least for this year, where he can lead by both example and by experience. And I'm looking forward to seeing Bernier in that role because he hasn't really had that role for the Canadian national team.
Due to recent events, Kyle Larin will not be part of the Gold Cup roster this time around because of his arrest a few weeks ago and his DUI. Yes, he resumed his career in the club level, but he will be missing the Gold Cup. How important is that absence for Canada? Is it important, or is the timing of it just a few weeks before give Canada enough time to actually figure out how to play without Kyle Larin?
Yeah, obviously, I don't think Tavio Zambrano was planning to not have Kyle Larin, and obviously he wasn't planning on, losing him in this fashion. It is unfortunate. Lots of things have been written and said about it, so I'm not going to dwell too much on that. But I do think from the sporting side, it's difficult. This is your most prominent striker, if not the best striker that Canada has available. I'm not sure if that's the case because I think Lucas Cavallini is also in great form right now, playing in a decent league. So we'll see. But just having Cavallini and of course Anthony Jackson-Hamel's emergence this year as a dependable club striker, I think kind of softens the blow a little bit. I still think that, of course, they would have loved to have Larin as an option, if not the starter, at least as an option on the bench. He can do different things that the strikers on the Canadian roster can't. He's a bigger player. He's much more physical. I know that Cavallini can play that way too, but he's not as big. He's a little bit more of a poacher than some of the other guys too. So he gives you a different look. So obviously, I think that Zambrano was planning to have him there, and everything he's said since is that if Canada makes it to the next round, he will be called in. But it does force a little bit of a tactical shift, and it may be good because you know what? I think even though Kyle Larin's only been with the Canadian national team for 2 or 3 years now, I think they've become a little bit too dependent on him, and they played a certain way with him, where I think now they're going to be forced to have different looks and try different players and try different formations, because I do think that maybe a two-striker formation with both Cavallini and Jackson-Hamel, or even Tosin Ricketts up there, will give Canada a little bit more chances up top. So it's both it's kind of a gift and a curse, to use a cliche, in that you're missing your arguably your best striker, but it also forces you to take a look at other options that you have, and this is exactly what this Gold Cup is all about.
Am I insane to look at this roster and think that they might have the pieces to play a 3-5-2?
Not completely insane, but a little bit, because I don't know about the central defense there. I do think that the 3-5-2 would help the fullback conundrum, because like I said off the top, I don't know who's going to play right back if they play a 4-man back line. But if they were to play a 3-5-2, Fraser Aaron is a perfect wing back on the right side. And, of course, we know what Raheem Edwards can do on the left side in MLS. So, I think that it's possible. I think that you're risking a lot because the center back depth isn't quite what you need to be. You need to have more center backs on your roster to have a 3-5-2. And there's not that many of them.
Yeah.
I know Adam Straith plays there sometimes. But he hasn't really been playing there for FC Edmonton that much, and he's kind of in between here, between a defensive midfielder and a center back. So you got guys that can play there. Of course, you got Vittoria and Jakovic, who are natural center backs, but you need another guy beside them that can kind of slot in without any kind of hesitation, because this, if you're playing a new formation, you want guys to react instinctively, not have overthink it, especially on that back line. So I think, if Zambrano was feeling risky, he'd do it. And I think the pieces are there to try it. I don't think it's so much of a slam dunk, though.
Yeah, I just look at the sort of the strength kind of seems out wide to me, and maybe, yeah. All right, that's a lot of the attention in this is going to be on one of those players that can play out wide and can take on a guy one-on-one in a way that we haven't really seen a Canadian player be able to do, maybe since D-Row. That is Alphonso Davies. How much of a role do you think he'll play in the tournament? He certainly is going to be a lot of the attention in terms of the media, but how much attention do you think he'll be in terms of his play?
I think it'll be similar to the way the Whitecaps are using him. Look, he's a talented 16-year-old, but he's still a 16-year-old. This is going to be his first international tournament at the full senior level. Of course, he's played at the youth levels before in friendlies and whatnot. But again, this is a competitive tournament, which he wasn't able to do with Canada before because he wasn't a citizen until 2 or 3 days before the Curacao friendly. So he's had literally one cap at the senior level, and that was a low pressure friendly at home. This is an international tournament away from home. I know it's the U.S., so he's very familiar playing there. It's going to be a very neutral ground, but it's still a different thing. And I do feel like they want to protect him a little bit, but also want to let him loose. And I think the way to do that is to let him loose late in games, the way that Carl Robinson is using him primarily for the Whitecaps. That being said, I think he could probably get a start, maybe even in the first game against French Guiana, just because it's arguably the lowest. Well, not arguably, they are the lower seeded team of the group compared to the other two teams in the group. But that being said, I feel like it's kind of playing with fire, because that's the game that you want to absolutely go out and put your best foot forward. Is Alphonso Davies the starter for the best Canada 11? He might be, but I think that playing conservatively is probably what Zambrano is going to do when it comes to his development and not throwing the kid out to the fire. So I think we're going to see him more as a second half sub. But you know what? It wouldn't surprise me to see him get at least one start in this tournament.
And a name that you mentioned earlier, Rudi, Anthony Jackson, has been a revelation for Montreal this year, literally playing himself into the starting 11 due to injuries, but as well performing extremely well as a super sub. And you mentioned the height and the physical aspect of a player mixed with a pure striker mentality, which means that he's at the right place at the right time. Poacher, if he needs to be, or there to hold up the ball to give his wings some time and space. Could we see Jackson Hamel being maybe a key player for Montreal? For Montreal, yes, for Canada,
definitely a key player for Montreal.
Yeah, that's exactly. But for Canada, like, he's a little bit out of nowhere in the national team program, playing himself into this roster. Do you see him maybe being really like a revelation at the national level too?
Yeah, you know what? It all depends on him. If he can bring that same fire that he brings to the Impact, and the way he kind of bullied his way onto the team. Because at the start of the season, it looked like this will probably be his last season. Who knows where he's going to go, and there were rumors that he was already kind of being shipped around and looking elsewhere. But all of a sudden he comes and scores timely goals, and then he's indispensable for the Impact. And if he can do that for Canada, then why not? I see no issue with him bulldozing his way onto the team, just the same way he did for his club. If he can do that, that's a positive for Canada. He like you said, he's a physical player. He brings something different than Tosin Ricketts would. Definitely, Ricketts is much more of a athletic type that runs down balls and outruns players. That's not what Jackson Hamel does. He's a poacher He can hold up the ball, as you said, and he plays a little bit more with his back to goal, but he can also show up in the right spots. So I think he'll be paired up with Lucas Cavallini if they play a two-man system up front. I think him and Cavallini are the starters, just based on the personnel that they've got. Because I think that him and Cavallini would complement each other more than a Ricketts would. I think Ricketts should remain as a super sub to run at tired legs from the 60th, 70th minute on. So given that there are only really 3 strikers on the roster, I think the chances are very good for Anthony Jackson Hamel to make a good impression for the Canadian national team in this tournament.
Now, when we talk about the Gold Cup and a tournament, it's always a tough task for Canada just to make it out of the group. We've talked earlier, Rudi, with the lack of goal scoring, and they didn't score the last Gold Cup. But could they actually make it out of the group this time around? For Mexico, it's a different one. It's a tough summer for Mexico with the Confederations Cup, and you have maybe an opportunity where Mexico is not going to have their A lineup in this tournament, and other national teams as well. Is there any chance that Canada pulls an upset and makes it out of the group?
There's always a chance. I think a lot hinges on that French Guyana game, the very first game, as I mentioned before, because the other 2 teams in the group are going to be gunning for them as well. They are the weakest team in the group. I feel like Canada is better than them. Of course, that's kind of going out on a limb because we don't really see French Guyana play that much, and they have some talent in the French pyramid of professional soccer. Of course, their most famous player is Florent Malouda, who somehow is able to play, but he's 40 years old, so he's a diminished player at this point. I think a lot hinges on that. If they can get the full 3 points in that game, then a draw will probably see them through against one of the other 2 teams. So I think a lot hinges on that first game, and Zambrano. That's why I think they're going to put their best foot forward against on July 7th against the French Guyana team. But yeah, even if they don't defeat that team, I think the other teams are they're not as scary when you're playing them in the U.S. as they are playing them away. They don't have to go down to Central America and face all the shenanigans and the things that are stacked against a Canadian team in the Central American environment. So that's a great equalizer within the U.S. rather. Canada is they're on even ground with everybody else. Yes, the crowds will be slightly favoring other teams, but it's not so overwhelming that, like I said, it won't be a big advantage for these other teams. So if Canada can go out there and put a good performance in the first game and then kind of ride that momentum and maybe nick a win or a draw against one of the other 2 teams, then they're already through, I think. 4 points usually gets you through to the next round, given how forgiving this Gold Cup knockout stage is. So it's absolutely a chance. Of course, they have to score a goal. And if they can do that, then the sky's the limit.
All right. Long-time Soccer Morning, not Soccer Today, Soccer Morning listener and often caller, Vince from Richmond Hill, had a question. So I'm going to ask Vince this question. Cavallini, you want to know your thoughts on Cavallini's return, considering his comments that might have been construed as somewhat negative towards Canadian soccer earlier this week.
Yeah. So if I'm correct in the comments that he's talking about, is Cavallini kind of said, and again, we're going through Spanish translation here, that in Canadian soccer, it's not necessarily as passionate as what he's used to down in South America. They don't take losses as hardly as, and he's talking about the players here, not the fans. Of course, we know the fans are a lot more passionate in South America than pretty much everywhere else in the world. But the players, that trickles down too. That the players don't take losses as hard as they do, say in North American MLS. Say, sometimes the truth hurts a little bit, and it's a lot. You can get away with a lot more of a, I wouldn't say a losing mentality, but it's a loss, let's go on to the next one kind of thing in North America than you can in other parts of the world, especially where Cavallini plays. And I think to a point that's good, because it's not life and death. It is a sport, but these are professional players, and they should be taking every loss as hard as possible. And you know what? Having covered players in North America for a number of years now, going to locker rooms and seeing them after games, they do take it hard. So I have no direct point of comparison because I haven't been in a South American locker room, so I have no direct point of comparison. All I can see is what I see on TV and whatnot. But I do think there's an element of truth of what he's saying. So maybe that's the kick in the behind that Canada needs, is a player coming from that kind of environment, and spreading that to his teammates, because something has to change in Canadian soccer, and a lot of things have to change, but this could be the catalyst that helps an attitude change in the locker room. We've heard Octavio Zambrano talk about it, that we want to win everything. We want to win friendlies. We want to win the Gold Cup. We want to win World Cup qualifiers. That's what we want to do. And I don't think that's anything different than what Cavalier is saying. And of course, it's no coincidence that Zambrano is also a South American. So maybe this is part of a mentality shift, and maybe that's why Lucas Cavallini was convinced to come back to the national team, because he's kind of simpatico with his new coach's vision. So if that's the case, then this could be a good thing. But of course, there's you got to keep it within realistic expectations. This is still Canada, and there's a reason why Canada doesn't win that much. But I do think the talent is there for Canada to at least compete on the CONCACAF level. So, if they lose, I don't expect them to take it as lightly as they would have under previous coaches.
By my count, there are 2 players, maybe 3. I'm trying to remember. Was Toussaint on the 8-1 roster? There's not a lot of players from that disaster still around. Really. So maybe
Cavallini is one of them too, actually.
Yeah. Okay. There you go. So that's I suspect that's what he's referring to.
Yeah.
Was that we have Borean? We have Straith. Was Straith around there? It doesn't matter. There's not a lot.
Yeah, I believe he was. Yeah.
Bernie was on the bench on that day.
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe on the field only was Ricketts, and Borean was not on the field. It was Hirschfeld. So I believe it's only Ricketts and maybe one other. So again, I don't have the roster in front of me, but as we all know, there's been a lot of turnover since then. That was 5 years ago. I can't believe it was 5 years ago, but anyway.
Hey, it's 3 coaches ago.
There's a lot of turnover going since then. So
3 coaches ago. That's how I see it.
Yeah, exactly. We're a real CONCACAF country when we're just churning out coaches like that.
I can still see that beer pint flying across the wall from my former co-host of It's Called Football. But at any rate, we talked about Borean, and I did want to mention the keeping here. Sort of, Crepeau is a very interesting prospect. Do we still call him a prospect, I guess? Do you think he'll see time in this, or is this still Borean's team?
For now, it's Borean's team. I think Crepeau is being brought along to kind of experience everything. As a goalkeeper, he's still extremely young, and he's not really getting any time at the club. I know he played in the Voyageurs Cup, but that's not enough. I do think that the Impact they're kind of grooming him to be Evan Bush's replacement at some point. He's not there yet. And I think it's the same thing with the Canadian national team. It's kind of similar to what I said about Davies, of course, but with a goalkeeper, you can't just throw a goalkeeper out there for a few minutes. It has to be a big, there's only one goalkeeper position on the field. So I do think this is Borean's team. And of course, you've got Lutweiler there as well, who has a lot of professional experience, albeit, it's not a particularly high level, but who is the Canadian goalkeeping position at this point anyway. But yeah, I think Crepeau is kind of being brought along to kind of see how everything's going and get through the travel days and see how the training goes. It's a little bit different when you're playing a tournament where you're playing every 3 days. So, again, he's another guy who's experienced that at the youth level, but at the senior international level, it's a little bit different, and there's just a little bit more going on. So, I don't realistically expect to see him play in this tournament. Unless something happens to Borean. And even then, like I said, you've got Lutweiler waiting in the wings, and he's got more professional experience. But I do think that this is the start of Crepeau taking over eventually as the number 1 keeper in Canada, because I do think that's the trajectory he's on right now.
All right. I haven't had a conversation about a Canadian roster at a tournament in the last 4 years without talking about Jonathan Osorio and some factors. So that's quickly mentioned. How much role do you think Osorio plays? Is this sort of a chance for him to reestablish himself as a national team player? Maybe the last chance? What are your thoughts on Osorio's inclusion?
Well, I don't think with Canada there's ever any last chances, just because their player pool is too small. And this is a guy getting regular minutes at a very good MLS club. And as long as he keeps doing that, he's going to be in the conversation. Admittedly, I think he'd tell you himself that this has not been his best season. He's looked very tentative out there. I think he's struggling with the 3-5-2 formation, which again we touched upon. If Canada plays a 3-5-2 formation, it might be the same thing. He's very deliberate on the ball. He's not as quick with his decisions as I think Greg Manny at TFC would want him to be. I don't know what the expectations of Zambrano are for him. Again, it all depends on tactically what Canada wants to do. But, I think Osorio's been struggling with the formation and how direct TFC plays. So if Canada wants to play the same way, it's going to be a struggle for him as well. I do think that he brings something to the team that a lot of Canadian midfielders don't have. He's very calm on the ball. He doesn't give up the ball very easily. He keeps possession and he passes well. But he's not particularly athletic. He's not going to bulldoze his way through like an Alphonso Davies will. He's not going to run for days like Russell Tyree will, for instance, or Will Johnson. He's not there, but he's a very good example of that. He like I said, he's very deliberate on the ball. He uses his brain more than his body, which again is a good thing. But it all depends on tactically what Canada wants to do. I do think that this is an opportunity for him to reestablish himself as more of a regular with the Canadian national team. But I definitely don't think it's a last chance saloon kind of thing because we're very early into Octavio Zambrano's era. And like I said, Canada's player pool isn't big enough that you could just write off a player based on, a 3-game or more scenario. So I do think this is a very big chance for him, but he'll have more chances in the future.
All right, real quick. I want to just a quick question on TFC to end the interview before we get what your goal coverage is going to look like. They're in need of a backup right back or right wing back is in my mind. That's their glaring weakness on this roster. Do they have any room to move in the transfer window, or are they pretty much stuck, Rudi, do you think?
There's always room to move in MLS. There's always ways to get the monopoly money that somehow changes hands and whatnot. I think a well-placed trade for some allocation or whatever the case may be could be in order. TFC has a glut of central midfielders, so I think that could be where some deals are made. I don't know. It all depends on what Greg Manny and Tim Bezbatchenko are thinking. And, if I were TFC, I'd be looking seriously at one of the players I mentioned before, Fraser Aaron, because I think that he is perfect. You know what? He might even be a replacement for Beitashour if Beitashour unfortunately can't play the rest of the season or whatever the case may be. Either way, I think he's a perfect backup. His time at MLS wasn't that great, so it kind of knocks down his potential contract demands. But playing that 3-5-2 formation is perfect for him because he's not that defensively sound. Ball and the speed that he has, I think he'd be perfect in TFC's formation. So, and he's unattached. So I think that's exactly where they should be looking. But yeah, is there wiggle room? I think there's always wiggle room in MLS. There's always ways to make money up here, and I do think that they're already looking at that because it is a huge hole to fill now.
Yeah. Well, you read my mind and why I was asking that question.
Yeah.
But, alas. All right, Rudi. What's your Gold Cup coverage going to look like at over at the Sporting News?
Well, it's going to be, of course, we're going to have heavy Canada. That'll be all me, and then we'll also have heavy U.S. and Mexico because that's how we cover things in CONCACAF. Those are the two giants. So those are the three that we'll be covering heavily, and then we'll be looking at the tournament as a whole. With our regulars like Ives Galarcep and John Arnold, who covers in Mexico. So it'll be a good, kind of almost a neutral thing. We'll have the Canadian coverage for me. I'm definitely not a neutral in that regard, but then we'll also have other guys looking at the rest of the tournament as a whole. So I think it'll be good alternative coverage to a more of our local kind of stuff here.
All right, quick prediction on what Canada does and who you think wins the tournament.
I think Canada gets out of the group, to be quite honest. This is my pie in the sky prediction. I think they're going to beat French Guiana in that first game, and they're going to get a win against one of the other two teams. They get out of the group from there. They call it the cavalry. Maybe Kyle Larin redeems himself with a goal or two in the next stage. I don't think they're going to win the Gold Cup or anything like that, but they're going to turn some heads. As for winning the Gold Cup, I think it's going to be the U.S. I think Mexico is. Of course, they've got a lot of depth, and they're sending a B squad just like the U.S. are. Those two teams are still better than everyone, even with their B squads. And of course, the tournament is set up for them to succeed. The U.S. has the biggest powder puff group I've ever seen. It's just ridiculous. So they're going to be able to ease the way into the tournament, and I think they're going to grow into the tournament because they got a lot of talent and a lot of guys that are hungry to prove themselves to Bruce Arena. I think Tom Dwyer is going to be the breakout star of the tournament for the U.S. And I think that's how it's going to go.
All right, Rudi Schuller, the Sporting News. Thanks for your time, Rudi, as always.
All right, thanks for having me again.
You are listening to Soccer Today, live on SPN Radio. Visit sportspodcastingnetwork.com for more.
And welcome back. Yeah, that was a good preview. I thought Rudy's always good with his time there. Yeah, I'm actually a little more hopeful now, and I'm starting to get a little excited about this because it is an international tournament that does matter. It is a continental championship. I don't care if it's the baby Gold Cup. We don't have anything else to play for another year and a half after this, so you might as well get cranked up and start to enjoy these games starting on Friday. If you go to the Voyageurs Facebook page, you can find all the viewing parties closest to you. If you want to start one, just get a hold of us in some way. Add us on the Voyageurs. We'll get it on there. Just call the bar. Make sure they'll show the game. It's on TSN, which is, I think, a remarkable thing. You cannot understand how amazing it is to just know you just click on your regular cable, basically, and it's going to be there.
Exactly. What? It's on TV? I don't have to put if you remember back 17 years ago, if you wanted to watch Canada, you needed to basically to have a RCA cable from your computer to a television that wasn't HD, and you didn't have that. It was difficult back then to watch something not on TV, and then now it's on TV. It just took 17 years, but it's going to be interesting.
If my memory serves, I know that Jerry Dobson called the final game. I know the final was played live, but I do believe that was a change, if I remember correctly. It's been 17 years, so forgive me. And there's been a lot of blurring that's gone through in those 17
probably
years of my life.
The beginning of the tournament wasn't on TV, and once Canada progressed to the groups, they're like, okay, we need to whoever it was it TSN, Sportsnet, or a CBC, whatever the case would have been 17 years ago. They'd be like, yeah, let's put it on TV because people need to see this.
Yeah, it was Sportsnet for sure, but I'm just trying to remember the exact. I think they might have been tape delayed. Even that Mexico game might have been tape delayed, and then finally they went live for the semifinals and the final, I believe, and I believe they actually flew Dobson and Forrest. Forrest was playing. I don't know who Dobson.
Forrest was in goal, so yes, he was flown there, but not for broadcasting reasons.
Yeah. I don't know who Jerry's play-by-play or color guy was that day, but I'd have to go back and listen to find out. But nonetheless, a long time ago now. I am starting to get excited about it, and I do think, real quickly, Kevin and I will do our full thoughts. I need to look at the whole rosters and the whole tournament a little more closely before I put a true prediction out there. But in terms of Canada, I look at this roster, and I do think that there is the potential that if they can figure out their offensive, start clicking offensively, that they should be able to beat French Guiana. And if they get that win and have 3 points on the board, then there is a good chance that they can advance because there are best third place finishers in this tournament. Costa Rica and Honduras are not completely B-sides, but they're a little less from my understanding. So, you might be able to drag out a draw on that. And if you get 4 points, you're absolutely going through. So I have some hope that they can finally advance to a quarterfinal. And once you hit a quarterfinal, we laugh, but you're really only an upset away from playing at least in the third place game. I think there's a third place game this time, or very less than semifinal. So that's something to game or to look for.
No, exactly. And I am getting a bit excited as well with the Patrice Bernier, Anthony Jackson, of course, the Montreal contingent with Crépeau as well, but more like the youth that's been injected in this national team program. The new head coach, his first tournament, the senior level for Canada, for Zambrano. So there's a lot of positive narrative going into the Gold Cup on and off the field to see if the direction is good. It's a baby step. Yes, it's the first stepping stone. It's literally the cornerstone of what the program will be in the next few years. So it's going to be very interesting to see how they do perform, how they do fare out on the field, to see if they can actually get some results. And we're looking at results, but the way they get the results too, right? The journey is important here, and to see Canada grow, we just hope, basically, Duane, if that is one way to put it, that Canada is better after the Gold Cup.
Yeah, well, that's kind of, I was debating is a strong way to put it. I had a back and forth a couple times on Twitter yesterday with Kurt Larson of the Toronto Sun about Patrice Bernier's inclusion in this. And Kurt's position was that he was too old and he shouldn't have been on the lineup because they should have been, any minutes he had are taken away from a younger player. To which I responded, first off, the leadership option, that's all there, and we all understand that. But beyond that, Bernier's form right now is amongst the best midfielders in the country. I believe that he, on merit, is in the best 11 right now. And I also believe that on merit, you should be putting your best players forward in this tournament, because after 3 consecutive Gold Cups, 2 consecutive Gold Cups where they haven't even scored during open play, 3 where they haven't got out of the group, they need to win at some point. They need to create some kind of culture that it demands advancement. And that's, I think, sort of speaks to the Cavallini comments that are getting a little bit of play at the Voyageurs board in terms of the passion in that. You can't just sit back and go, we'll just throw the kids out. If we lose, we lose. No. At some point, you got to demand that this team advance. It is our full national team. This is a continental championship. You want to get out of the damn group.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Let's move on a little bit here. Big news in the world of football today, of course, is Lionel Messi re-signing till 20, basically for the rest of his career at Barcelona.
Messi? I don't know. I don't know that name.
Yeah, exactly. The world's number 1A or 1B, depending on your perspective, player in the world. He is signed on for, I think, the rest of his career. The Manchester City accounts that I follow, and I follow many of them, were all joking today. Well, I guess we could scrap those rumors now because it was a long thought that maybe he might go to. Well, I don't think it was a long thought by anyone other than dreaming City fans that he might go. But nonetheless, it seems like Messi will retire at Barcelona, as it probably should be. It's not surprising. Did it surprise you at all that he's signed on to finish his career? Maybe he goes back to Argentina for the last couple of years, for the sunlight years, but
maybe. But even then, like, when he's not at Barcelona, what else does he really need to prove or to do? Or like, it's going to be time to enjoy the spoils of years of being one of the best players ever, right? So I don't think once he retires or once he stopped playing at the biggest level possible, I don't think he's going to continue to play. What's there to gain for him to come in MLS after? What's there to gain for him to come? Like, there's nothing at all.
Yeah, he's gonna get kicked by some guy that from the University of North Carolina, right? Like, I mean, is that really what you want? I don't know.
Ask Pirlo if he's enjoying his time.
Yeah, there was just photos of Pirlo ready to get on for the first time since May the other day, and just look at his face. I actually tweeted it out. It was like dead eyes. Like
I can be on a beach in Ibiza, being Pirlo, but no.
Yeah, precisely. But instead, I'm getting kicked by a fourth-year senior from the University of North Carolina, as I said. So there you go.
Instead, I have to run back and defend the back post off corners, and I'm exhausted. I don't want to do this anymore.
Exactly. And yeah, I'm done. I'm out. It's like, it's not like, what is Pirlo's point at this point? He's not like trying to battle his way back on the Italian national team or anything. He's just basically collecting a paycheck in MLS. And
literally,
anyway,
like, all right, let me go to Broadway on a Tuesday, and then let me go there and here, and all right, I got a game on Saturday.
Yeah, exactly. It's like he's playing in a pub league in his mind, and it shows in his play. But we've talked about him too much, and it makes me sad because he's such a brilliant player. Such a brilliant player.
Speaking of sad, last night, Duane, in LA, wow, RSL 6, LA 2. What a result! And Beckerman's roll and fist bump emulating Robbie Keane in StubHub Center, and turning heel, literally making the crowd go crazy and yelled profanities at him. But it was quite a moment, and I have to say, RSL, surprising victory here, 6-2. What does it say about LA?
Well, it says that LA is missing a lot of players right now, and it didn't help that when Van Damme got his stupid red card, and that's really, he has been an interesting cat. Van Damme, he's played well at times, and he's played like a bonehead at times, which was kind of the reputation he had coming in. And he gets that second yellow card for a red card after the 90. After the 90 is over, how do you get a dissent red card for moaning at the referee on the pitch after the game is over? Like, what do you have to say? Anyone who's been anywhere near field level knows that the type of profanity and type of stuff referees actually put up with before they pull a card is pretty mental. So what did he say to him to get that second? And that just sort of speaks to maybe he doesn't quite have the leadership or maturity level needed to lead that team. And right now, I think that's one of their veteran core players that they need. I've I'm on record of saying that, if there's a dark horse, as much as the Galaxy can be a dark horse to turn it around in the second half, I would pick them just because of their history. But losing 6-2 to RSL, regardless of how many players you were down, regardless of how many players were suspended, how do you do that? RSL's, in the conversation for worst team in the league.
Yeah, they are, like RSL, DC, Montreal. It's a terrible season for all parties involved. But that result in LA, I think, will maybe either be the wake up call. But if you go back to Kurt Onalfo and his history as head coach in the league, well, that result might not be that surprising, but that's a total different story. And they literally were not giving a lot of choices when Bruce Arena decided to be the next U.S. men's national team coach to take over Jurgen Klinsmann, short notice, and LA needed a new coach. So we'll see where that goes. I have to say, I'm always impressed by Alessandrini, and I think he's one of the best acquisition by any team in this offseason. The player used to play for Marseille is literally finding a great way to play the league. We don't talk about this enough, but Ligue 1 in France, style of play, the level of play is very reminiscent of Major League Soccer, and we've seen player come from that league to Major League Soccer and be really effective, not necessarily missing a beat, and Alessandrini has been another of those cases.
Yeah, well, he's slowing down a bit now, but Benoit Giroux, of course, came over from Ligue 1 and did quite well, and has played a vital role in leadership and sort of style-wise for the first 3 years he's been here.
Another guy from Marseille. Like, Marseille is literally the hotbed for Major League Soccer player now.
Precisely. Well, and I think Ligue 1 is an untapped market, particularly, and I've always said, if you happen to be in a market that has a heavy French presence, would it not make sense to heavily scout?
Wink, wink.
Would that not make a lot of sense?
Well, does Drogba count? Because he played for Marseille too.
Yeah, there you go. Well, just guys that can speak French, because they're going to fit in and feel comfortable in Montreal. So there you go. All right. I wanted to talk real briefly about Pep was at a charity event last night where he said, and this is causing a little bit of controversy over there, he said it was going to take City 10 years to become like Barcelona, Real Madrid, and Bayern Munich, and Juventus are the 4 clubs that he mentioned. If you read the comments a little more carefully, he wasn't exactly saying that it's going to be 10 years before City wins something big, but he was sort of suggesting that it's going to take that long for this project to become like like what I interpreted as to become like a team where you don't even think about it anymore. You just go like, oh yeah, they're great. Whereas, you might have to look at City year to year, and you even have to look at clubs like Chelsea and United now year to year as whether they're great or good or whatever, or how they stand at the current time. But nonetheless, he said it would take 10 years, and that caused a lot of people to sort of like go, oh, Pep has one of his great strengths and weaknesses is he's incredibly candid. And I don't think he said anything that was all that controversial. Manchester City is not in the same conversation as a Barcelona, Real Madrid, Bayern Munich, or Juventus. Not yet. They could get there with the money and resources they have, but 10 years. Maybe sometimes you have to be a little bit more gentle in how you say that stuff, because you do have to sell hope to your fans.
Yeah, and not just that. You can always take those comments out of context, and then it becomes a headline, which the way he mentioned it as a whole was not necessarily headline worthy.
Yeah, exactly. This is a charity event, and like, again, he's kind of candid, and when he gets comfortable, he sort of gets that glass of red wine, and he sort of just spouts like the philosopher sometimes, and that's,
Speaking of that glass of red wine, or maybe in this case, a pint of beer, and a lager probably. Wayne Rooney, probably going back to Everton.
Yeah, that broke late last night. I was up because I was stupid and turned Football Manager on at 11:30 at night.
Yeah, I saw that. How is it, by the way? How's 2017 version?
It's more detailed. It's a little more. Yeah, it's not bad. I'm working the kinks out there. I still am getting used to the buttons and where stuff are, so I can't play it quite as quickly. I decided for some mysterious reason to play with the Orlando Pirates. So like the South African team.
True. I was like, Orlando Pirates. What league is that? NDSL, whatever. No, okay, it's in Africa.
Yeah, so the South African Orlando. Anyway, so I decided to play a South African game. I've never played a South African game. It's been in the game forever. I've never played a league there, so I thought I'd try it out. At any rate, we're playing something called the You Be the Coach Challenge next. I don't know what the hell that is. This is one thing I love about Football Manager is I learn about leagues just by playing them. Like I learn about their cups and how they're structured and all that. It is actually an educational process. So I'm doing research, really.
That's how I'm justifying my time on FIFA too. I'm actually doing tactical strategy research, like testing out formations and stuff.
Precisely. That's exactly what it is. And if anyone wants to buy me a full console, I can do that too. Patreon.com.
It's going to take a lot of Patreons.
I'll even take like your older consoles if you want to like upgrade or something. If you want to just get me one. Yeah.
What's your current one? Okay, give Duane a PS3. How about a hashtag Duane? Give Duane a PS3. We can get that going. Somebody probably had like 2-3 PS3s just literally like helping like shimming a table or something somewhere. So give Duane a PS3.
I'll absolutely take your used PS3. I have no shame. I will be happy to take your used PS3 because my current system is a Sega Genesis right now. So there you go.
Well, you can still play FIFA 94, which if you can play was one of the greatest ever soccer game, which the one where you can run from the referee when he's giving you a red card and you're not going to get one. Now, I used to run forever on that game.
I have FIFA International Soccer, it's called, and it's from 1992. It is the original FIFA game. It's kind of a button mash, but it's still kind of cool to have the original FIFA. At any rate,
you original hipster. Jeez, yeah. You're an OG, Duane.
Actually, I usually play Sega. I can't get an NHL 94 to work. That's my one thing with Sega. I can't find a working copy. Every copy I buy, they only cost like $2 to buy them usually. They never work. So I had like 6 of them here, but none of them will work. I do have a working version of Sonic the Hedgehog though, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, it is.
Moving on from this, vintage video game conversation here, back to Wayne Rooney. Speaking of vintage,
vintage Wayne Rooney, Everton.
Yeah, it's like OG Wayne Rooney. You know what? I don't mind that move for either Everton or for Rooney. I think there's a feel-good aspect to it. Everton's kind of the Giroud. They're after Giroud as well, apparently. So they're going to have the slowest front line in the Premier League. But
once they get the ball at the 6-yard box, watch out.
Yeah, well, they're going to be friggin' deadly in 2007, man. Like, Jesus, unstoppable.
Oh, yeah, those moves are not retroactive, by the way.
Yeah, at any rate. No, look, they've made a lot of moves this year, Everton. You got to give them some credit because it seems like they're trying to do something positive for once, because it seems like Everton's been happy to spin its wheels and be like 8th in the table and make some money and sort of be good but not great for a long time. So at least they're trying something. So I do like that. And as much as, Shrek and I have a difficult relationship at times because of my affiliation, I would happily watch him go back to his boyhood team, who was first team, and not be part of the the evil empire that is in Salford there. So I wish him well there, and I do think it actually at this point in time is the best move. There's interesting stuff going on in Manchester United as well, and once the Gold Cup ends, we're going to really start focusing a lot more on sort of previewing the Premier League and stuff like that, because there's been some interesting non-developments there. There's a lot of rumblings around United right now that they're just not making a lot of signings, that Mourinho's upset. You don't want an angry special one because that can make everyone miserable around him. So I don't know what the hell's happening.
It could take just a few months between like league champion and Mourinho wanting to get out. So you never know if how he's feeling right now after a year with no trophies. Well, no, there was some trophies. That's true. There was a Europa League.
Yes, exactly. Quickly, the shock result of all shock results yesterday as well. Not much to break down here because I obviously didn't watch the game, because who the hell would watch this game? But the 4th place team from the Luxembourg League defeats Ranger.
I saw that progress from Luxembourg. From Luxembourg, yeah. Is going to the Europa League, and the Rangers Europe campaign is done already.
In July. They won the first leg 1-0, lost the second leg 2-0. This is how far the mighty have fallen, and how bad is the Scottish League. Paddy Power, the famous gambling site in the UK, paid out anyone who bet on Celtic to win the championship next year. That's how Rangers loses to a team from Luxembourg, not even the champions of Luxembourg. Like, for God's sakes, at least lose to the champions. And so they just said, you know what? Yeah, it's Celtics. We'll just pay this out now and get it over with. At any rate,
we'll just ask for refunds if it's not the case. It'll be a lot quicker.
Yeah. Maybe I'll. Well, I don't know what's going on in Scotland. I don't know how you fix that either. It's a tough one. It's a tough slug up there. It's like they're closer to the Welsh League than they are to the English leagues now, and I think that's unfortunate. Because
Duane, maybe we'll be talking about this problem 15 years from now in Canada, saying, "Damn, Hamilton's is like a strong foothold on the entire Canadian Premier League." Is like, it's annoying. Like, you never know. But hopefully, we're closer to England than to Scotland. Yes, exactly. All right. Quickly, tonight's games, TFC Orlando. I don't really know what to think of that one. I 2 Heat games in a row. And speaking of Heat games, apparently the 40 Celsius today already in Houston for that Montreal game. So that's going to be a tough one there. It's going to be a tough one. Montreal flew Monday to Houston, arrived late Monday night in Houston. And you'll have a very difficult game tonight for Montreal, Toronto, Orlando as well. It'll be the interesting. Cal Aaron will be playing tonight. If you are available, if you can read the Orlando Sentinel from a few days ago, there was a sit down with Cal Aaron where he says he's going to have to win the trust back of the fans and everybody that was disappointed and felt like he did something wrong. But so people that were offended and disappointed, he's going to have to win their trust back, and that's going to start tonight against Toronto. He's going to have maybe a chance to put a few goals, and I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case actually tonight, Duane. All right, fair enough. Popper's Pub here in Toronto. If you're in the area, there's Budweiser sponsoring this, as they are all of these viewing parties at Popper's during this year. You can get a free prize. Last week they gave, it's a prize if you buy Budweiser product, which means a beer. You get a ballot. Every ballot goes in. There's a prize pulled at the end of the viewing party. At the end of the year, there's going to be a signed TFC jersey given away. Last week, there was a signed TFC jersey by a single player. That single player happened to be Italian. You can figure that out. And someone won that. Some lucky person that went to the viewing party last week won that. So come tonight, buy a Bud, and win a prize, and enjoy some good company with the U Sector Supporters Group here in Toronto. Popper's Pub's in the Annex. It's a famous old bar there. You can go up in the patio on the rooftop at the end of it. It's a nice night. It's a beautiful place to spend a summer evening. So that's what I'll be doing tonight. On Friday, I will be at the world-famous Scallywags to watch Canada play French Guiana. Kevin, anything you want to promote before I let you say goodbye? Yeah, tonight I'll be doing my French show, Sur la Transversale, the French equivalent to Off the Woodworks, covering the Montreal Impact post-game live from the studio. So I'll be watching the Houston Dynamo Montreal Impact game live from the studio. And I will maybe, if the demand is there, maybe trying to find a way to open the lines for your calls in French post-game live on Facebook, live on sportspodcastnetwork.com as well. For Duane Rollins, I'm Kevin Laramee. You can follow Duane on Twitter at 24th Minute and myself at Kevin Laramee. And as always, until tomorrow, another Gold Cup preview tomorrow. And until then, well, have a great soccer. You were listening to SPN, the Sports Podcasting Network. Visit us, sportspodcastingnetwork.com.